It's because I loved coaching the person. I was taking what I had learned around my own personal development and about how I can unblock you and then get you to absorb the sales technique or whatever it was that we're working on.
Good afternoon, guys. This is Eric LeClaire over at Push Press, and we're continuing episode 52 of In the Trenches. And we've got a gentleman who actually isn't that far away from me. We're both here in Southern California. He's a little bit closer to the beach in San Clemente. But for those of you that may not know Markus Gerszi, he's a friend from a ton of different communities. I say circles that we live in, work in, breathe in. There's a handful of folks in our past that I highly respect. And so I've got a chance to watch him as he's evolved from gym ownership and has moved through a bunch of different communities. But if you've not followed along, I think the phrase Alpha Hippie might stand out for some of you. But today, welcome, Markus. Thank you so much for taking your time out and coming on board. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for asking. It's a pleasure to be here, Eric. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So one of the first places that I got a chance to at least connect with you was through the Level Method. And that was kind of owned, operated, and created by Nathan Holiday. He was on one of our earlier episodes of In the Trenches. Nathan has since wrapped up shop here in Southern California and has moved out of state. We are doing the same thing. We've wrapped up our gym. We are moving out of state. How did you end up in Southern California? How are you calling this place home?
I was born and raised here, my friend.
Right. And so did you end up arriving through strength and conditioning and fitness from a unique experience as a young man? Did you participate in collegiate sports? Kind of give me a background or a framework on how you found that valuable in your life.
You know, I grew up doing martial arts, taking it quite seriously into my teens. And then getting into my late teens and 20s, I fell madly in love with music, and that was my life's path as far as I could see at that time. And that led me down a rather unhealthy path where I went from being very fit and just a very healthy person, very aware of my body, to just completely trashing it over the course of about 10 years. And coming full circle in my mid to late 20s, I found CrossFit. This was about 2008. And at the time, I had developed some pretty limiting injuries in my hands and my wrists from playing too much and not taking care of my body, too much inflammation and all that. And I met up with an old friend who was a strength conditioning coach, MMA fighter. And he said, "Hey man, I can help you out with that." Because he asked me, he's like, "Dude," he's like, "what's happening to you?" Because he remembered when I would fight. And he said, he's like, "I can help you out with that, man. We can approach strength conditioning a little bit differently than how, we used to do it. I can scale this stuff back for you and we'll meet you where you're at." I said, "Great, let's do that." So that's how I found CrossFit in particular. And that's really what was a big pivot for me in my life, because I had shifted gears already into business and marketing and business development. And I started attending this gym, and that's really where everything began to shift in that direction, not just from a personal health standpoint, but from my career.
So that was 2008. For some of the new gym owners that have been around, that is quite a chunk of time, I would say, before CrossFit became a thing. I mean, what we say before the games, before Reebok, before this massive groundswell. Mm-hmm. You've had a chance to kind of see it through its many phases. Do you miss anything from back then? Do you miss any parts of that, of the early days?
Oh, sure. I mean, it was an exciting time, especially here in Southern California. I mean, this right. was it was an underground scene. Everyone, it's like everything was new. Everything was the first time, right? We were doing workouts out of a crummy little warehouse in a back alley in San Clemente that had, we made the pull-up rig from piping we went and got at the hardware store. So to say that it was janky would be a compliment. Oh yeah, this thing was, people would wipe out and it was like, ugh. Anyway, yep. So, what I really loved about that time was the excitement in the air. Everyone knew something really important was happening, and we could all feel it. And everyone was coming on the scene. I mean, this is where you find people, Becca Voigt just doing workouts. You're just doing workouts with her in a gym somewhere, and you're like, dude, this chick rips. And
Wild.
like, this chick is smoking me. And she goes on to become this legendary athlete in the CrossFit space. And it was just really, really fun times.
From those early days, do you still maintain some close friendships with some of those early gym owners, coaches, and folks you've trained with?
Of course, yeah, many.
Yeah. I like that our scene collectively, Southern California, was so close to Santa Cruz, and
Right, the epicenter.
Yeah, those early days was simply a seminar, right, to learn how to do a lot of this work. And the certifications weren't even truly designed yet. And you could drive up north and you could hang around with Craig or Annie or Nicole or whoever, they were there. I mean, it was like we could get online and you could communicate and you could be there Friday night and hang out. I mean, that's the same thing. I mean, I don't know, how did you ever end up meeting or hanging out with John, with Wellborn over in Balboa?
I did, yes, several times.
Yeah.
I mean, all those guys. I mean, I went there. I think the first time I met him, he was hosting one of those CrossFit 101s when Greg was touring, right? Going around from gym to gym and introducing people to it. And I went up there to that one in particular because I had already started on the Barbells for Boobs project with Zauna. And we went up there to go hang out with Greg because we were in the works of, trying to get Reebok this was the first time actually that Reebok was there courting CrossFit, courting Greg, and they had flown in, and we were talking to them about sponsoring us for Barbells for Boobs at the time. And yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, as they talk about early days, early relationships.
Mm-hmm.
What a different world. 2021, you got gyms that are brand new. They're trying to open. I don't want to say we're on the back end of COVID, but by no means is it easier today. But there's so much more available opportunity, I think, today. Education, technology, systems, processes, marketing. It's all like, you can go purchase systems, you can hire mentors and hire coaches. That wasn't around in those days.
None of it.
How did you then fill me in, or at least, so that I can think through this process? 2008, 2009, where did, by 2011, Active Performance became yours, or became a thing that you built?
Yes, started it in 2011.
Okay.
And so I'll give you some context. So I had, prior to starting CrossFit, I had already had a media company, a marketing company, and we worked with small local businesses where we did grassroots guerrilla marketing, training around sales, and really, really basic stuff, but we did well. And then I, at the gym, actually met what ended up becoming my new partner, in where we took this to a whole nother level. So he had an existing business where he was working with some larger companies, and he taught me a lot about business development and marketing, and we kind of merged our concepts. And the gym that I trained at, which was CrossFit Orange County, was one of the original CrossFit gyms. I think it was like the 64th affiliate to open globally. And these guys they were firemen, really, really good dudes, great coaches. And I would just be blown away with how poorly the business was run. Yeah. And really, I was kind of hoping they'd ask for help, because I'm not going to push it on them. And then one day Jeff says, hey, I've been watching what you do, and I've been meaning to ask, can you help me out, man? This is just a total shit show. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm so glad you asked. So we did, and it went really well. And then we got call after call after call from other affiliate owners. And over the course of about a year, this became what we specialized in. And we actually ended up developing the first sales and marketing platform for CrossFit affiliates and coaching CrossFit affiliates on how to run their business. It was, very different at that time than what we were doing just a few years ago. Yet that was where all that started. And I got to help Reebok, we were part of that whole like initial campaign. I helped them develop Reebok CrossFit One and launch their first 25 affiliates all over the globe, which was a tremendous experience. And in doing that, I was so like head over heels for the affiliate model and the community. And I was so involved, and I had actually been wanting to start an affiliate, yet we were getting busier and busier working with affiliates. I just wasn't able to. And then I finally had the opportunity. I made the space in the end of 2011. One of my lifelong best friends and training buddies from when I would do martial arts when I was growing up, he's actually the one who introduced me to CrossFit. And he says, "Hey man, what would it be like if we had one?" And 30 days later, we were open.
Right. Spinning and spinning and spinning. You're like,
yes. I'm like, dude, I've been hoping you'd ask. Let's go.
Wow. Talk about right place, right time, right enthusiasm.
It was so fun. Yeah.
So then that was 11, 12, roughly somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. What city was that in, and what was the differentiator? What made you guys stand out?
So we were in Mission Viejo, so Central Orange County. And what made us unique and had us really stand out was a couple of things. So number one, I approached the build out. I had seen hundreds of affiliates at that point. So in person, because of the Barbells for Boobs project, where what we did to get that project off the ground is Ziona and I went literally from gym to gym, 2 to 3 a day for like 90 days straight, doing grace at all these gyms, which was an experience. But I got to see so many different boxes and everything from your most ghetto back street, back alley gym, garage gym, to these really beautifully done up gyms. Like, for example, Jimmy Letchford, who, works with HQ, really involved, top of the ranks. He had just opened CrossFit Ethos in Lake Forest. And that was one of the first, like, when I don't want to say big box, but it was like the primo box where people like really branded, like the wall ball targets, and everything was designed. Like, it was a designed gym. Right. And that really impressed me. And there was a couple other ones. There was CrossFit by Overload out in the Riverside area. There was a couple of them. Yeah, there was only maybe 3 or 4. CrossFit Monrovia was literally redoing their interior at the time to like really take it up to that next level. And so for us, that was my opportunity, because I love great design and I love nice things. So we did a really nice job with the build out, for one. I put it in a retail space, for 2.
Oh, interesting.
And that's because I saw no one was doing that. So I found like there's literally one block because Mission Viejo is my hometown, and I wanted to put this in my hometown and leverage my existing network. And also we needed it. I wish I had it when I was growing up. And so there's literally one block where Scott and I were like, we have to go right here, because that is the only place where we would be zoned to have, where it was mostly warehouse pricing, but there was a couple of streets that had retail fronts. And I was like, we got to go right here. And sure enough, I mean, we looked at like 60 spots, Eric. And then the one spot where I'm like, that's it, that has to be this one, it panned out.
Outstanding. Talk about doing your diligence ahead of time.
Well, this was over the course of 30 days. So it was a shotgun approach, but good thing I had a lot of prep time as far as mulling the idea and the dream over before I took any action on it, to be able to move pretty quickly with it. And then the last thing was too, is that we were very, very intentional around our programming, which at the time, that seems really obvious now, but in 2011, 2012, I mean, most people were either following.com or it was just a total shit show as far as the programming was concerned. It was all about random and hopper workouts and just maximum beat down at the time. Right. Yep. Total smash sessions. And we were not about that. We were about sustainable, long-term. And that at the time really stood out.
I bet. Yeah. If you had 5 CrossFits on the road and you guys were having a very singular, a very clarified message that was completely counter to the other 4, all of a sudden folks are paying attention. They're like, wait, it says CrossFit, but it says something completely different on your website. Right. I dig that. Totally dig that.
Yeah. And the other piece, there's one more piece, and I didn't think of this until you were just saying this, but the other big thing that had to stand out is I put a lot of effort into the marketing experience, both internally and externally. And as I was thinking back here, that really actually was probably what stood out on the front end the most, right? For everyone listening who's a gym owner, those first things I mentioned were what we were thinking about. But as far as the client, I wanted to create an experience. And this is part of what always rubbed me wrong, because I dropped into almost 500 affiliates at that point. And I would go in and someone would know that I was coming. Like, I just talked to this guy on the phone. Hey, Eric, I'm going to be coming into your gym at 5:30 tonight for the 5:30 class. I'm the bald guy. I'll see you there. I would walk in, the guy would see me and be like, hey, how can I help you? After I've been, walking around for 5-10 minutes in the front space. And I'm like, oh yeah, hey, I'm Markus. And he's like, oh yeah, hey, we spoke on the phone. And I'm like, that's how you say hello? Like, I'm a special guest coming in tonight for this thing that we're doing with this fundraiser. And I was just always floored with how terrible the client experience was. It was, I remember the gym that I was training at. I called, left voicemails, sent emails. I'm like, dude, take my money. I'm trying to sign up.
Yeah.
And then I ended up having to walk in the middle of a class and be like, hey, I'm trying to sign up. And he's like, I said, introduce myself. And he's like, oh yeah, I got your emails and stuff. Been meaning to get back to you. And then turns on and keeps coaching. I'm like, bro, credit card, put it in the thing. I want to train here, please now.
Let's go, man. So do you think a lot of that has changed? Fast forward now.
Oh yeah, man. It has changed a lot. You'll still find the people who do it the old fashioned way, and it's your, like, we're going to make it hard for you to join garage gym style. Yet I think most have gotten the clue, because we're not the only ones doing this anymore. There are, franchises and right. Yeah. And there's people, I would say the majority are doing a much, much better job than what used to happen.
Right. Agreed. 100%. It was almost in similar circumstances. We traveled a ton, and it was box after box after box after box. And there wasn't much unique that stood out, with the exception of it was all like easygoing and matter of fact. And sign the waiver if you got to find a pen, figure it out. Like,
sign it in blood, whatever.
You're like, really? This is how? Every state we went to, it was just kind of lackadaisical. And, and maybe that was just the infancy of the brand and of the affiliate model. And I would agree. I would say today, man, you walk in and there are some powerhouse gyms out there that is just high service, high value, high touch point, all the way across the board. All the way.
Love it.
So active performance, and I don't want to rush through any of like your high moments. But when you look back at those times, did you ever think to yourself, there was going to be a point where you said, okay, next we're going on to the next thing, I'm going on to the next thing? Or did you think you were going to have the affiliate forever?
I did think I was going to have that gym for a longer time than I did. And I only ended up selling it about 5 years in, because I had an offer I couldn't refuse. And then my other projects had taken off to a point to where it was silly for me to continue to spend any time doing that, considering the circumstances. And I can walk you through it if you like. But, I loved that place. I loved it. I love a brick and mortar facility. I grew up with 2 immigrant parents who moved here from Austria and started their little, customer service centric businesses, right? One was in the auto field, one was in the salon industry. And so I would spend my time in these brick and mortar environments where it was all about taking care of your customers and all of this. And I guess I always yearned to have the same. I wanted to have my own, and I loved it. I loved having my little community where it was, a place that I regulated the tone and the quality and the overall vibe. And I loved going there. Yeah. Loved it.
Man, that speaks volumes to who you are as a person, and the fact that it pours out of you, your care and your compassion for like being fully invested in the client and their experience, not just the result, but their full experience from day one to moving on wherever they go in life. Because clients leave. They go, they move, they graduate, they get a job, they get married, they get divorced, whatever. It's tough because I hear from a lot of coaches, they're in it for the dollar, or they're in it for the beat down. And it's like only a couple coaches have said what you've said. So I appreciate that. That's important. I really appreciate you said that. Talk to me now. You moved in a direction, I would say, more focused on the business aspect, or more focused on the the systems and the processes aspect. What did that look like in the early days? Where did maybe you get the interest for that?
Well, when I started active, I was very much focused on all of the external growth activity from the marketing stuff that I was doing with the gyms, websites, guerrilla marketing, and I wasn't having to deal with the internal operation challenges.
Right.
That's not, at least that's not what was on my radar. It's not what people were coming to me for, and it wasn't the problem I solved. Yet, once I then started running my own facility, I noticed that there was a huge gap on the tools that were available. It was Mind, Body, and Zen Planner, and that was pretty much it at the time. I mean, there was a couple of little things popping up here and there, but there was really nothing around client experience, about marketing. It was the Wild West when it came to the tools, and you were just Frankensteining together anything possible. And, so I developed my systems, and I did so by cobbling together my own stuff using everything under the sun, spreadsheets, and I had custom things built and all sorts of things. And, I just knew in my bones that there was something cooking as far as where technology was and where I thought it was going.
Yep.
I thought, this whole client experience thing is missing here in the gym world. And I'm very good at it. I spent time in the hotel industry, 5-star hotel industry, where I learned a lot about architecting and experience for someone. And that's what made us stand out, is that I had created an entire experience from the time you reached out to the sales process, to the onboarding, to a year in, 2 years. And I had it all laid out. I created emails, I created landing pages, I created check-in sequences, all sorts of stuff. But managing it took me 20, 30 hours a week alone. I'm telling you, you should have seen the spreadsheets that I used to juggle all of this and track where they were and what was the last touch point and notes and all the things. It sucked, but it worked. Yeah. It was really effective, but it was a nightmare to manage. And so it put me on this quest to find the tools. And, automation software at the time was still, it was not in a price point range yet to where it was feasible for a business that size, right? If you were a larger company, you could, find a Salesforce, you could, like a company like Salesforce, and they had a custom development team, and you could spend the 25 grand to have something custom built. And I did that with other companies, but not for my gym. And I was like, there's got to be something else. And right then was when Infusionsoft was coming on the scene.
Right.
So I found Infusionsoft, and I said, okay, great. This looks like it's going to be a really good solution. And then I started tinkering with it, and I was like, holy crap, this is a nightmare on the back end. Now, it's super robust, but it is not easy to set up. So I was looking around, who could I find that utilizes this tool? And I found my eventually partner, but I found a gentleman on the East Coast who had developed a very basic version of this. And he was only working with about 4 or 5 gyms at the time. And it was just what I was looking for was someone who understands the gym business enough to where I could guide them to help me build a thing. So I hired him, and I took his existing platform, and we started working together. We had a really great rapport until eventually I proposed that we do something bigger together, and he allowed me to rebuild his entire platform and change the whole direction of the company. And we partnered up, and we developed the first iteration of what ended up, I mean, we had lots and lots of gyms on it eventually, but we had this first iteration, and that was a big shift right there, because this allowed me to now replicate this experience in a way where I could just get some information from you and help you build this full website and automation machine, which was insanely robust. I mean, hundreds of emails, and if it's male or if it's female, or if they're new to CrossFit, if they're experienced, how do they answer this survey? Like, it was just bonkers. And we developed this big old machine. And and then I ended up partnering with Mike and Doug, or we ended up partnering with Mike and Doug at Barbell Business, Barbell Shrugged, because I saw that they had the channel and they had the audience, And, they had just started barbell business not that long before. And I jived with their angle, right? And so I looked at what products they had, and I thought, well, mine's better, so I'm going to call them up, and I did, and we ended up partnering and going down a whole nother path.
I believe it. I mean, we talk about a fantastic story of leverage. You go from taking your care, compassion, and enthusiasm for coaching and owning at one location and touching clients locally, to now stepping up and stepping up and stepping up, and now taking education and just the care for delivering that experience, now leveraging that out to gym owners, who are in turn leveraging that out to their experience, to their clients. You go from touching a few hundred to now touching a few thousand. Job well done, man.
Thank you. And
that's
good
huge.
for you for noticing that, because that was actually the driver for me, was that I saw the impact we made when we were able to keep people engaged at the gym.
Yep,
right?
For a long period of time.
Correct, because that's really the game when it comes to fitness. It's not about short bursts. It's all about making this part of their identity. And that was what I designed the system around. And that's why I built all this stuff, was because I wanted my people to make the shift, right? You have to meet people where they're actually at, and then take them step by step through the process of making this who they are, right? A part of their identity. And the only way that we were able to do that was if we were able to keep them around long enough, right? If we let them and their, pre-existing relationship and understanding of fitness and nutrition, and, whether they identify as an athlete or a fit person or a healthy person or not, determine whether or not I was going to make my impact, I'll be damned. I can do better than that. And so that's what we did there. And that's why why I sought that out, was because I knew that my role, because look, Eric, I'm not the best fitness coach by a long shot. I was not that great. My partner, Scott, was really the coach. I really just learned from him and parroted what he did. My role was the impact and the connection. And, I realized, I said, look, I'm not going to be the guy who's changing people's lives with the next new squat progression or whatever. I'm like, there are people who are passionate about that. But what I get to do is I get to help make sure this sticks. And these affiliate owners are too important to not pull this off. And I watched them fail one after the other because they didn't have these tools. They didn't understand the game. And the game was keep people for as long as possible at the highest average client value possible, because you're changing their life. And you will get all the things that you want. You will have raving fan customers. They will send you friends and family. They will buy your products. They will buy your workshops, your specialty, everything, because you got under their skin. You connected with what really matters. And now it's wide open.
Man, you're giving me goosebumps. As a former gym owner, I think to myself, like, dude, you're hitting all the high notes on even in having a good partnership, recognizing your strengths or your weaknesses, and having an opportunity to fit in and actually execute against what you are really, really good at. So that's a huge win. It's a massive win. So then you go from partnering with other strong brands and being, having a chance to impact or create an impact now for gym owners nationwide, if not worldwide. What it sounds like to me is that you constantly are looking forward and thinking about improvements, whether it's incremental improvement or this, massive jump in the ability to help assist other gym owners. Where and how, where did in the back of your head Alpha Hippie come from? How did that show up?
Oh man, that's a big jump from where we just left off. So I'll give you the expedited version. I sold my gym, I think it was 2015. I think it was 2015. And I really only sold it because my partner, Scott, he was at a place in his life where he had realized through gym ownership, and he had a whole other career outside of the gym as well, where he was, a really, really high-end business consultant. He worked for this huge company and made great money. And he was having to turn down opportunities to go and do these big projects that would have made him a lot more money and that he really wanted to do. But because we had the gym and we had these agreements that we had made around, how involved we remain and all that, and he was at a stage in his life where he realized I don't like being around people. And because he's an introvert and he still had a lot of unresolved personal things that he was just starting to recognize, and being at the gym was really not a healthy place for him. It helped expose the opportunity, but him remaining as involved as he was not great. So when out of the blue, we had someone reach out because of the Barbell Business podcast who had been following my show. Someone reached out and said, "Hey, I want to buy your gym. Tell me how much you want." And it was like, and Scott was like, "You better fucking take this. Like,
Right.
I gotta go. Like, I've got stuff to do. I don't want to be here." And I was, because Barbell Business had taken off. I mean, exponential growth. It was bananas, that we were at a place where I was like, dude, I can't even spend more than a couple hours a week on my gym. And I was not in a position to replace all the things that he did and to reconfigure this business. Why wouldn't I take the exit?
Right.
And so I did, and we sold the gym, and from there went full force with Barbell Business and continued to grow and scale that. And we got, I mean, it was a rocket ship. It was wonderful. And then in late 2017, we had a big blow up. And this was actually not between Mike or Doug or myself so much as another partner and a couple of the guys. They had some, what seemed like really minor issues, like personal issues, that as we scaled and grew, I mean, you start getting into big dollars, you start getting into high stakes, everything, right? Then character traits get amplified, and
Ego.
particularly in the ego department. And there was a bit of a pissing match that turned into warfare behind the scenes, and it blew the whole project up.
Yeah.
And I mean, for those who were around at the time, it was not pretty, and it was quite tragic at the time.
I was going to say, I purposely chose to step over that just in case that was a sensitive topic, but I'm glad you brought that up, because the navigation of relationships and partnerships is massive, because even when you start with something that is little and you maneuver all your way and you pour gasoline on something amazing, what gets exposed up here could detonate. And
oh yeah,
it happened.
And here's the thing, these issues were all already present there when we started it. Yet when there's nothing on the line, you are very easy to just gloss over, oh, well, it seems like there may be a little tension between these couple guys, but like we can get past it. And for me, one of my strengths, and still at the time weaknesses, was that I was really good at mediating. And so I was able to calm him down and just keep the peace. Well, that was my mistake and my contribution to making this a total disaster, because now, having gone through the full evolution of that and learned the lessons from it, I would not do that anymore. Now it would be great. We're resolving this right now while there's nothing on the line, because we're not going any further without us all being on the same page on all of these key things.
Huge.
And I didn't. I thought, no, this is working. Let's not stir the pot. Let's not create let's not like bring the friction to the surface. And so needless to say, so it all blew up. And it was a big mess, and there was lots of tension there for a while. And for me, that was really where the evolution towards Alpha Hippie began, because that was a really dark time for me, because we went from sky's the limit, nothing, I mean, we were killing it, to it was just a full stop. And I had to, overnight, because the camps kind of divided, and we had to rebrand what was Barbell Business as Gym Right, and go down this whole path of rebranding and explaining this situation in a very neutral way, without throwing people under the bus, because there was all sorts of legal messy stuff going on. It was really challenging and taxing to make this shift. I just put my blinders on and my entrepreneur hat of like, I solve problems no matter what. And I just went to work, and it worked. But it really cost me personally a lot. I really went against the grain of my own values, my, what was important to me, from my health to my family and quality time, to all these things really just were maxed out and broke. I broke the whole thing. And in that process, I started to look into, I mean, I'd been on a personal development journey for quite some time, because if you've been in business long enough, you recognize the only thing holding me back from being successful is me. has nothing to do, or not nothing, has very little to do with the tactics and the systems and all of that, as much as it has to do with me and my lenses and how I'm choosing to experience and see everything. And I had already been doing work, but nothing like this, because this just basically blew it wide open. And I had a lot of lessons to integrate, and I did. And as I integrated more and more, I recognized that this time, this role, this person that I had been, I had gone full circle with that, and I was ready to move on. And so I sold my shares in Jim Wright, and had finished out my time there. And in doing so, I just began to recognize, what was it that I loved so much about coaching business owners, and about what I had built and had done over the last 12 years in that role. And what I realized is that it's because I loved coaching the person. I was taking what I had learned around my own personal development, and about how I can unblock you and then get you to absorb the sales technique or whatever it was that we're working on.
Right.
And that's the part I really loved. I loved coaching the people, because I loved helping you accomplish what you didn't think you could do. That's what I loved about coaching movement. That's what I loved about coaching business. And I got to a place to where I realized, you know what? The business part now is just wasting my time. Not that I don't enjoy it too, because I love business. It's something I'm obsessed with in many ways. And at the same time, I had gone full circle in wanting to teach that material. And I wanted to focus all of my effort on teaching people, and in particular men. And that was because my partner, Angelo Cisco, who you'll see if you check out the podcast, he does a lot of the interviews on there. You know, he was with me through that whole process, and he had started running some tests. So I also owned an agency, a marketing agency, and I helped him kind of get that project off the ground, which really for him was his own personal development journey. And it was a little hobby, and we just wanted to interview people who interested him. And it just was a total passion project for him. And as it grew there, and I was helping him from the marketing standpoint, I was just loving the material, and I just loved all of this, because for me personally, one of the things I recognized in that big evolution after 2017 was, my unresolved issues from when I was a kid, and really, how my ego was still guiding my career and my relationship with my wife, and most importantly, how it was showing up for me as a dad. That for me was that's
Huge.
it. Now we're pulling no punches. And as I started to learn more about this and apply more to my life, I recognized, for one, how poorly prepared I was to be a great father. And I'm not talking about get away with it stuff, because most dads are getting away with it. But in the long run, the reason why you don't have a great relationship with your kids, or why they don't give you the respect that you wish you would get, and all the things that where we fall short, that's because you're getting away with it and not really going all in on this. And
100%.
as a father, our role is to model stability. It is to model what it's like to have that confidence and to be able to advance. And that's the masculine role. And I recognized how bad of a job I was doing, but also that, I had almost no one that I could go to that was doing it. And so, I, on myself, and also Angelo he was very, very involved in this already. I was really drawn to that. And as I went deeper and deeper into it, and as I then was done with my time with Jim Wright, I had started Gym Breakthrough, which was kind of like my bridge, if you will, because I'd already decided I'm going to go down this Alpha Hippie path. Yet I had not personally gotten to a place yet where I was willing to let go of it completely and basically jump off and build the plane in mid-flight again. Right. Because I had gotten so far down this path where I had a very well-developed program. I had a reputation. I was good at what I did. I enjoyed what I did. Yet it wasn't where my heart was anymore. Right. But ripping that Band-Aid off was pretty scary, going from making a great living and everything being cush to who knows what the hell we're going to do, because we didn't have a plan yet. But then I got to a place in like December 2019 where I said, okay, Angelo had asked me for like the third or fourth time, like, hey, let's do this. And at that point I had recognized it and I went down the path. And, it was, that was really the final step in really moving into this next stage of my life, where I've committed myself, and my work is now to help individuals really get the most out of their life.
I'm really happy that you're digging in on this, because very selfishly, that's one of the reasons why I read and watch and follow what you post. I'm a new dad, or new-ish dad, where my daughter will be 17 months here in a couple of days. And that was becoming dad and becoming a father has just been this most amazing piece. And anytime you write or publish anything about it, I'm just constantly watching, reading, learning, digging in as much as possible, reflecting back on, like you talk about, how poorly some men are set up for being able to move through that. God, I'm going to sound like I'm back in the military, but that leadership role, it's truly a leadership role, but it starts in here. And so you wrote something, or maybe it was a meme you had posted, but back in February, you wrote, if you love yourself, you love others. If you hate yourself, you hate others. Relationships are all about you mirrored. And so I thought to myself, like, man, I gotta keep reading. I gotta keep paying attention. I gotta keep focusing. One of the last circles we are engaged in is with Scott Ramage and Brotherhood of Fatherhood.
Yeah.
And I think it's just been an amazing resource for a lot of folks, both gym owners and coaches, men in particular, that are in those leadership roles that also happen to be husbands and also happen to be dads.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some really powerful roles. Who are you helping today that fit that kind of triad? The gym owner that's also the husband, that's also the dad. Are you digging in on concepts for them to be like working through? You've got classes, you have workshops, you put out so much fantastic stuff. If folks want to find you or start reading and watching, how do they find you? What's the easiest way for them to get in, to start digging into your work?
Well, check out the Alpha Hippie podcast. It's a great way to dip your toe in and get a feel for what we're talking about.
Yep.
And you can check out imalphahippie.com website. That's where we're going to have show notes. We'll have video versions of everything, and there's webinars and all sorts of great content there too. However, if you want to join the conversation and get involved, we do have a rather large free Facebook group. That's the Way of the Courageous Man. And in there is where we do these live trainings, and we host the wonderful conversations. And this is a group just for men, where we start getting into some of this stuff, because we learned too that most men, they don't have a forum to go and to really talk about it without it feeling judged, without feeling like you're being watched. And I have to be careful what I say, where you can go in and really just let it out and be in a supportive environment where people are going to help guide you in the right direction. You can go there, the Way of the Courageous Man on Facebook. So
I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, you've been a guest on a bunch of other different podcasts, different audiences, probably. Our audience, obviously, at Push Press, there are current former gym owners. They may have branched into the digital space, but they definitely have their own following. Push Press has a freemium tier that is for beginner coaches bridging into general management of a gym, or gym management into now their first-time owners. So we kind of run this full spectrum of beginners to intermediate to advanced, both men and women that, of course, are gym owners. But if we could use today's platform, if we could use the In the Trenches podcast as a way to reach out and to invigorate or inspire that gym owner who is along their journey. We know we just came, I don't want to say through COVID, but we're, in California, obviously, we're significantly challenged by it. We had a lot of gym owners that were struggling. They were struggling internally. They were struggling financially. They were struggling in relationships, their partnerships. We saw gyms implode. We saw gyms shut down. We saw gyms forced to shut down. We saw a lot of people have to take a hard look at themselves in that leadership role. In all of your lessons, from coaching, from gym ownership to coaching and counseling gym owners, and now to working with men through their leadership roles and their family and on behalf of themselves, is there anything you could leave us with today, or, provide for those gym owners that might be on the fence? They might be nervous about the steps ahead, or they might be uncertain about their own leadership role. Any thoughts or any reflections that come to mind?
Great question. Your business, your relationships, all of these are just spokes off of a hub. You are that hub. They are all just reflections of where you're at. So if your business is struggling, it's because you're struggling. Focus on yourself. Make yourself better first. Because when you make yourself better first, everything gets better. It is the common denominator that goes across all of those spokes. And when you get yourself right, all of a sudden work gets better. Your relationships get better. Everything gets better. It isn't always an external solution. And I know because I chased those for the better part of my adult life, where I was looking for Band-Aids. I needed a better marketing trick. I needed a better software. I needed a better fill in the blank retail display, whatever it is. And I would seek out the surface level answers, when really, when I began to work on myself and take myself, my personal development more seriously, everything got better. Everything got easier. All those things where I thought like, oh, I'm not that kind of marketer, or I'm not good at this thing or that. It's all BS. It's all BS. And really that's what it comes down to, is stop bullshitting yourself. It's if you don't feel good, if it doesn't feel right, like start with yourself, because it's not the coaches, it's not the industry, it's not COVID, it's you.
Outstanding. Outstanding. What a poignant way to absolutely encapsulate this entire episode. Man, thank you again for your time. Thank you for sharing vulnerabilities, authenticities. Like, your story holds such rich context. It's great to get gym owners, entrepreneurs, business consultants on here that have such a long-standing history with helping others. It really will provide some great value for those that dig in on today's episode. So Markus, I sincerely appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you again for having me on here. It's been an honor being on your show.
Awesome. Thank you very much.